Hello, everybody, and welcome. Nice to see some of you from the previous session.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I know this has been a long day for some of you. I think the first session, the keynote this morning was what, at 9 o'clock? Have you been on doing this all day long? If you have, congratulations and kudos.
I've been scoring literacy assessments for teacher credential candidates since 8:30 this morning.
That is so painful.
It's good. It's just intense to be on all day.
Yes. So thank you for joining us. I am Dr. Marga Majuri, Professor of Teacher Education and Chair of the Dyslexia Teacher Training Program at University of La Verne. And I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves. While we're doing that, feel free to just share your background in the chat.
I'm Dr. Amber Bechard, and I am the Chair and a Professor of Inclusive Education, which is what we call our Education Specialist Program, our dual credential program. And along with Marga and Adam, we are all board members of the International Dyslexia Association of Los Angeles branch.
And Adam, you want to just give us your background?
What she said. Adam Wells. I am a lead resource specialist teacher with Von Nexitry Learning Center in San Fernando, Pacoima, and I am a newly appointed board member of IDALA.
And we're so happy to have him. Okay, thank you. And thank you for joining us. Nice to see you, Marini and Leah. Anybody else want to share their background? Nice, so we have a small group. We can be a little more informal. If you want to unmute, you can tell us. And or what brought you here? What is your interest in dyslexia? Anybody have a friend or loved one that is dyslexic?
I do, Adam Wills. He offers a great perspective. So Mark and I are professors, but Adam is actually the expert because he is not only a resource teacher, but has dyslexia himself. So sorry to call you out on that, Adam, but I love that you have that perspective for us. It brings strength to our trio.
It does. Thank you, Cheryl. Okay. Well, welcome. So I'm going to do a little bit of a background and sort of an overview neurologically, and then Amber's going to get into some of the strategies and things you can do practically. So just so you know, hearing, language, and speech are evolved neurobiological skills that have evolved over like 100,000 years. We learned how to speak and communicate with each other. And we first learned language by listening, except reading is cultural. We made it up. So we do not have evolved neurological pathways because it is so recent in our history, like only the last 6,000 years, that to be able to learn to read, we have to rewire and use other pathways in our brain for reading. So it's not something we're born with. It's not natural to us. We have to learn it. So Stanislas Dewan, who's a research scientist from France, and I just got to hear him speak live last week. He's amazing. Wrote this great book, which I highly recommend, and he's going to show us what happens in the brain when we read just one word. So let's just take a look at that. Let me just share the sound here. So you can hear his cool French accent.
From the back of the brain to the front of the brain.
You're hearing it?
It will loop several times. You can see the information enters into the occipital pole, which is the visual side of the brain, moves into the ventral areas, and then explodes into the left hemisphere. Distributed activity.
Okay. This is a really good video. We will share the link to these slides, and I recommend you watch the whole thing because it's a good overview of the book. So my recommendation is watch this video, then read the book. But what he shares next, whoops, wait, I want to go on. There we go. Is this image, and this comes from his book too, which shows us all the different pathways that need to be connected together in order for us to be able to read. And remember, that video was showing one word. So when we read one word, all those different parts of the brain light up, and all these different things need to be engaged in order to be able to read. And this red, I have a very sensitive trackpad. This red area here, he calls a visual word form area, or the brain's letterbox. that actually is a part of the brain that we are wired to remember objects and faces, because obviously as a baby, learning to recognize the faces of your caregivers, like your mom and your dad, is going to be really important to your survival. So part of that region of the brain is sort of usurped for letters and sounds. And here's my sort of shameless excuse. I learned to read so young that if I see your name in print, I will remember it, and I will remember it better than if I just see your face. So I might see you, Leah, on the street in a week and have no idea who you are. But if I see you with a name tag, I'll go, oh, Leah, yeah, I know who you are. You were in my workshop. So there's just my apologies.
And I'm not going to remember either way. So please accept my humblest apologies. Visually, word, nothing. It'll take me 2 or 3 times.
See, that's why we need your perspective, Adam.
Exactly. Okay, so the simple view of reading was proposed, I don't know, in the 80s by Goff and Tumner. And what they said is basically reading is word recognition times language comprehension, and that gives you reading comprehension. You go, okay, there's not that much. You teach a little word recognition, you give kids some language, and they're going to be able to read. But when you break that down into something a little more detailed, it's not so simple. So this word recognition part is all this stuff: phonological awareness, being able to manipulate and identify sounds and words, decoding, matching letters and words, and then sight recognition, being able to recognize and orthographically map multiple words so they're familiar so you can read fluently. And then look at this language comprehension part of the reading rope. There's background knowledge we need to have, there's vocabulary, there's language structures, there's verbal reasoning and literacy knowledge. All this stuff needs to be able to work together. And then we need to practice over time so we can become more fluent and become skilled. So it's a really complex process. And it was Louisa Moats that said teaching reading is rocket science. And it really is. It's very complex. And I don't know why it just did that. Oh, because I clicked on the link. There's a link here. And I don't want to go to the link. Okay. So the International Dyslexia Association revised its definition of dyslexia. And here's what they say: that it's a specific learning disability that's neurobiological in origin. It's characterized by difficulties with accurate, fluent, and/or fluent word recognition and poor spelling and decoding. These difficulties typically result from a deficit in the phonological component of language that is often unexpected, related to other cognitive abilities. In other words, kids with dyslexia otherwise come off seeming really smart. So dyslexia is a specific issue with language and literacy. Secondary consequences can be reading comprehension issues. And because they don't read, they have reduced reading experience compared to their peers, which means they're going to be having, difficulties perhaps with vocabulary and background knowledge because they haven't been exposed to print. So what this breaks down to, the key definition of dyslexia is a weakness in phonological processing, which means distinguishing or manipulating speech sounds, which then leads to difficulty matching letters and sounds. It's neurobiological in origin. In other words, typically they're born with it. It's 50% or more inherited, so 50% or more genetic, about 15 to 20% of the population. So Adam, who in your family is dyslexic?
My father and my brother.
Okay.
Well, my father was no longer with us, but yeah, definitely.
Oh.
He was not a reader, horrible spelling. It was just very evident that that's where it came from.
Yeah, sorry to hear it.
My mother is a voracious reader, so yeah.
Darn it. It's like, which side of the fence did you fall on, right?
Yes.
Okay, and often dyslexia is coexisting with other challenges and or strengths. A lot of our kids that are dyslexic are also gifted. And as Amber was saying in the previous breakout, sometimes those gifted kids are so good at faking it that they can compensate and we don't notice they're dyslexic. Oh, are you still hearing me? My ear things just died. Okay, we don't notice they're dyslexic because they can fake read. They've either memorized words or they listen to somebody else and get it so quickly. Also coexisting with dysgraphia, difficulties with writing, and dyscalculia, which is the hardest word to say, which is difficulties with math. Dyslexia is not issues with comprehension, but it's often linked. It is not about letters reversals. We are wired biologically to see the same thing in multiple dimensions. If you've got a saber-toothed tiger that's trying to attack you, you want to be able to see the front of it and the back of it and know that that same animal is dangerous to you. So if you see a chair, it's always a chair no matter what way it faces. But letters, especially letters like B and D, require a fixed orientation, and we have to learn to see them. That one direction means that one sound. Okay, some of the challenges we find in schools is about a third of our teachers think that what people call learning issues or attention issues are just lazy. 43% of our parents, right, wouldn't want others to know that their child had a learning disability, which makes me nuts. And 54% of the parents who go to a doctor's ignore the recommendation. So why did you go? So these things are problematic, and this is something that we need to get over big time. Okay. So how do we support kids that are dyslexic? Typically structured literacy instruction is the ticket, very explicit instruction. Morton Gillingham.
Margot, we can't hear you anymore. Something happened to your audio.
Okay, hang on. Sec.
We
Okay.
got you. What you're saying, we can hear.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. All right. Anyway, so they designed structured literacy programs to support kids who are dyslexic. Structured meaning concepts are taught the same way every time. It's sequential. We go from a more simple to more complex process. It's cumulative. We build on lessons every time. It's explicit. We don't assume knowledge. We come right out and say it. This is A consonant. A makes A. It's multisensory. We're using audio, visual, tactile, and it's systematic. So some of the commercially based programs like Wilson, Linda Mubel, Barton, 95% are all based on Orton Gillingham. So in the dyslexic brain, we can see through MRIs that typically developing readers, like on this left one, have these two areas in the brain that light up when they read words. Dyslexic kids do not see that word, that letterbox area there wasn't created in the dyslexic kid, but with intervention, and this study actually was reporting on not really good intervention, but even with bad intervention, we were still able to create that word letter form box area in the brain for kids. So the point here is that we can do intervention for kids and it can make a difference in their ability to read. So just a little side note, we are not the only creatures that have phonological processing issues. For example, whales who have issues with that are tone deaf get lost in the ocean. Very sad, I know. Okay, so let's just take a minute, either unmute and tell us or write in the chat. What's some thought? What's some idea that you can that you're already getting so far? No thoughts? Well, all right then. We will just keep going. Amber, do you want me to just keep sharing?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so I love this visual created by Nancy Young, and it kind of talks about the same idea that we think about in education called kind of the tiers of instruction, but it's a little bit of a flipped upside down, because at the bottom of the ladder are those who have dyslexia, and those students absolutely must have what Margaret was describing, Orton Gillingham-based structured literacy that is systematic and assumes nothing. We teach every single skill explicitly in a systematic and structured way with multisensory access. So that grouping of students, they're not going to learn to read without that very specific type of instruction. But then we have like the next tier, the 40 to 50%. They need the code-based instruction. They're going to benefit from this systematic and sequential reading, but they might have picked up a little bit and perhaps been maybe a poor reader without such systematic instruction. Then this is like kind of more where Margot was talking about. She said she learned to read so easily. She's at top 5%. She was like born reading, right? And then there's that like 35% reading is relatively easy. There's someone in California, his name is Kareem Weaver, Dr. Kareem Weaver. He has another version of this ladder of reading. I can't get him to stand still long enough to send it to us, where he has shown teachers predominantly are in the top, in the green. They learned to read easily, therefore they love school, therefore they became a teacher. So we have all these teachers who learn to read easily, but who are trying to teach kids that need systematic, explicit instruction. So it's a little bit ironic, right? What we need to do is have really strong curriculum at the base of our instruction so that all of our students are learning to read effectively, not just the top in the green here. So what does this mean for us as educators, whether we're teaching teachers, because I saw some of you in here are actually preparing educators, working at the university level. Some of you might just be thinking, I'd like to become a teacher. So what this means is we need like responsive, really important, what we call tier 1 instruction, like in gen ed classrooms, all gen ed classrooms, in our TKs, in our kindergarten, first and second grade. We need very specific strategies utilized in systematic ways. In addition, beyond just those like beginning to read years, we still have a bunch of kids that didn't have effective instruction. So we really need all of our educators to understand foundational literacy. So what are some things that we should be doing, all of us as educators? Phonological awareness. That is all about sounds and sound manipulation. Sometimes we think of reading as just like we're going to teach the letters and the sounds that go with them. We do get there, but there's a step before that, phonological awareness, that we really have not been emphasizing a lot in schools. And so we really need to work on phonological awareness. I'll give you a couple of games for that. Syllable types. Okay, I'm going to admit it. I was a kindergarten teacher who did not know all of this goodness when I was a kindergarten teacher. So my apologies to those children and their parents. I know it now, and now I'm on a mission to share it with everyone else. There are 6 syllable types, and if we teach children those syllable types, they can access all sorts of words by analyzing what type of syllables. Then I'm going to show you something about part words, and we'll talk briefly about decodable texts. So, phonological awareness. It is the ability to hear and manipulate sounds in spoken language. There's tons of videos on this with sound.
Okay, team.
That's enough. That's good. I don't want to have to make it painful for you all. But if you just write this down, phonological awareness, you can Google, you can YouTube hundreds and hundreds of activities, but we just need you to know it exists. Sound games. So like 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds start playing games to help our students listen to each chunk of sounds in words, manipulate those sounds. That has so much prediction toward effective reading, is the ability to distinguish the sounds. So phonological awareness, write that down, tons of fun things there. Syllables. So now we're listening to sounds. One of the things we can listen for is syllables. I remember when I was a kid, we did classical syllables, but now we have kids who are so used to physical activity in school. I just thought, let's do some jumping. So I know you're all standing around. So wherever you are, stand up. I'm watching you, Kimberly. Stand on up. All right, we're going to jump that syllable. And that's just going to be 1 syllable for dog. Let's hear it. Dog. How many jumps do we get on that? Dog. It's just 1 syllable. All right, let's try it. That next picture, that's a raccoon. How many times do we get to jump? Raccoon. All right, I'm not going to make you do rhinoceros and tyrannosaurus, but you get the idea. Tuning kids, the youngest of kids, into listening to the sounds in words will have an amazing impact on their reading and spelling later. So once we teach students how to listen for those syllables and identify how many syllables are in a word, then they start to be ready for instruction on the 6 syllable types. It is very explicit. We teach each syllable type, put it on a big poster on the wall, and make sure that our children understand the syllable types. The most and simplest one to learn first is the closed syllable type. Now we call this picture is the clover. And it's because the word clover, each letter in the word clover stands for a syllable type. So C is closed syllable. And a closed syllable, the vowel sound will make its short sound. And the vowel sound is followed by a consonant. So this is where we start our syllable instruction. Words like cat and sip and top. Short syllable, short vowel sound in that closed syllable. And then we progress to an open syllable, which is where the vowel says its name in words like hi and see and he. If we teach just closed, thanks Margaret, and open, and students go, wait a minute, I know there's 2 syllables. Now I'm gonna look at that one has a vowel sound. That one has a vowel sound. By the way, definition of a syllable is each chunk of a word that has a vowel sound in it. That's what makes it a syllable. And so then we have them look closely at that word to identify, is it a closed syllable? Is it an open syllable? And then eventually a vowel team syllable, like with an EE or OA. We also teach magic E syllables, like the silent E on the end, R controlled syllable, OR, AR, ER, and such, and then the consonant LE syllable. There also are tons of activities for teaching the syllable types on YouTube, but I never knew to even look it up when I was looking to be a really good teacher. So second thing to write down to educate yourself about if you're not learning about this in your classes is the 6 syllable types. This type of instruction, if you want to homeschool your own children, thanks, Margaret. Or if you want to start bringing new things into your classroom, the 6 syllable types is the second most important thing that you can be doing to help your students all be good readers. So phonological awareness, 6 syllable types. Look at how fun this is. This is like the whole fall semester right here. Closed syllables, you work on a short vowel, ends with a consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant words, Kit Kat. Open, and then silent E, vowel team. I just love this. This is not me. I did not make this up. I found this and I love it. I think kids would dig this. In my fantasy, the entire school knows the syllable types, and the science teacher and the social studies teacher have children breaking apart words by their syllable types so that they can learn these words and access their content area vocabulary. All right, I promised we would get to heart words. So once upon a time, kids were given lists of the most commonly occurring words. They're called high frequency words. And they were told, memorize these. Just memorize these words, but without being given the tools to actually access the sounds in the word. So truth be told, there are some words that have these unpredictable or irregularly spelled sounds. Said is a perfect example. But just because the middle of said is irregular doesn't mean that we should just dismiss it altogether as a memorize that word or memorize those lists of words with flashcards, right? Let's use every single word as an opportunity. So the heart word method is when we use the decodable sounds to be a reinforcement of the of the decoding skills. So I see an S. What sound does S make? S usually makes S. I don't know that middle, but I see a D on the end, and D usually makes D. So we're looking at the parts that are predictable and decodable. It starts S. It ends D. Those are predictable. That opportunity to reinforce the decoding process is really valuable. Now let's talk about the middle here. You're going to have to remember that part by heart. AI in this particular word, which comes into books a lot, AI usually says A, but in this word it's said. So we have to memorize that part by heart. And if we want to get even more sophisticated with our kids, and they love this, we can encourage them to become word detectives and go into the etymology of the word. That's the history of the word. And ask them to figure out why the AI says If you can inspire your children or adults that are going to become teachers to teach their kids to love literacy, like to become Dr. Maduri's, like Marga, she's so nerdy. She's totally nerdy at this. She loves looking up etymology and discussing word origins. If we could create that, just imagine how excited kids would be to do it. So third strategy I'm giving you is heart words. Also, plenty of YouTube videos modeling this. Thank you, Marga. I knew you would chime in. It's the relationship between say and said. Go ahead. I'll stop talking if you want to explain it.
So AY is how we spell the A sound at the end of a word, right? And AI is how we spell it in the middle of a word. You'd say day, D-A-Y, or rain. So when say became said, you had to change the Y to I, goes in the middle. As far as the pronunciation, I think that was just a regional pronunciation. But the spelling had to stay the same, so we knew that they were related to each other talking about speaking. Those are the kinds of things you learn over the years as you do this stuff.
It's probably going to hit when you flip the slide, but this is just a video talking us through the process of heart words. Again, I'm going to defer you to YouTube. There's tons on there to help you learn this heart word method. All right. Now, I've given you phonological awareness, super important, syllable types, really, really important, and heart words. There's another tool I didn't even know about until about 5 years ago when I started studying dyslexia, and those are decodable texts. Flyleaf Publishing has just extended for the 5th year in a row that all of their materials are free online. So the systematic part of Orton-Gillingham instruction, which benefits not only students with dyslexia, but all students who are learning to read, is that we systematically instruct each individual phoneme. That's the fancy word for sound. Each sound, and we teach that that sound is connected or represented by a grapheme. That's the symbol or the letter or set of letters. And I actually now teach teachers to talk to 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds with that vocabulary, that academic vocabulary of what a phoneme and a grapheme is. And we have 44 phonemes in the English language. And children already know those phonemes by the time they're like 3 from learning to speak. They listen and they talk, so they know all the sounds. So we start with the sounds and then we systematically teach the graphemes that correspond. Then we use, as we're teaching to read, decodable texts. And we present children who are learning to read with texts that contain only the sounds and letter correspondence that we have taught. So these decodable texts are not the same as like Reading Rabbit or leveled readers. These are literally decodable with a few heart words thrown in, and they correspond to a scope and sequence. So when we're teaching kindergartners, maybe like their 7th grapheme, we would present them a book that only contains words made up of those grapheme phoneme relationships. I didn't even know about this. but they are based on a child's developmental stage. And it's quite nice when you go to Flyleaf, they have the scope and sequence. They tell you, oh, here are these 6 sounds. Here are the books that the child can read. Now we're up to 30 sounds. Here are the books the child can read. That's what a decodable text is. Amazing tool to use for the earliest readers. So we don't frustrate them by presenting a book that has all sorts of words that they have no idea how to read. And that makes them feel just like some of you felt in our previous session, which is like, what am I missing here? Why can't I read this? But then gradually, as we're learning to decode, we're also learning the experience of rich vocabulary and literature. One does not preclude the other. We still have our classrooms filled with materials that are rich stories representing cultures. We still spend time on language development, and we will do read alouds. But when we ask a child to read a text, we give them text that they know how to read. Sounds like it's such a simple thing, but we actually don't do it all that well. So these are all linked. We'll give you the PPT so that you can grab all these resources. And Mark, do you want to take it from here?
Sure, can do.
I appreciate it. I'm going to sign out and let you guys go. Marga and Adam will finish you up from here.
Adam, if you want to check out too, feel free. All right, thank you, Amber. Okay, so
Thank you, Margaret.
just to give you a little sense of what's available, we wanted to just highlight this chapter 4 from the dyslexia guidelines, which are signs to watch out for, because I think that's really important. Like we said, kids get good at faking it. And so some of the things they do to avoid reading are things like hide, avoid, do what they can to avoid it. In other words, I have to go to the bathroom, I have to sharpen my pencil, act out, anything, because they'd rather get in trouble than look stupid. So if you have a child that's behaving poorly, there's probably something behind that and probably some kind of learning challenge. I think, was it Marini that was talked about having neurodivergent children? So that's something you might see in your kids. Yeah. Have you seen that kind of behavior, or have they been getting the kind of support they need so they don't have to do that?
Well, my 12-year-old, it's not dyslexia, but my 12-year-old is in 6th grade, and the summer before 6th grade, he was diagnosed with inattentive type ADHD, which we had no idea because my younger son is medically fragile due to a genetic mutation. So he's on the severe spectrum. So he's non-speaking, uses a wheelchair and all of that. So his situation is completely different. But my 12-year-old, he did have speech therapy when he was younger for a speech delay, but then that kind of equalized and he's fine. He's very bright, but we noticed some issues, some academic issues, and we just kind of thought that it was more reluctance or not wanting to do the preferred things, being careless, doing the bare minimum, those sorts of things. Sometimes you chalk it up to, oh, that's just the age, and it's typical kids kind of being reluctant to doing work. But once we got the diagnosis, it really helped us to figure out a little bit more about how his brain works and how to give him better supports with his assignments and executive functioning skills, planning out an assignment, seeing it through, that sort of thing. So it was helpful, though it wasn't dyslexia. It's still like a learning difference that we were able to better navigate once we had the definition and the tools to be able to support it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm tutoring an 8th grader right now, actually, who also I think is ADHD, attention. He's not ADHD, hyperactive.
Exactly.
He's inattentive. And those kids, it's easy to slip through the cracks because they don't, the ADHD kids that are hyperactive.
Exactly.
And you see the behaviors, but these kids just kind of space out. They're kind of quiet, daydreaming, and you don't notice.
Exactly.
And so I think combined with dyslexia for him, that put him behind. They actually did some assessment of him in 4th grade and decided that he wasn't eligible for an IEP. But then they didn't do anything except accommodations where they give him extra time, which didn't help him learn to read. So now in 8th grade, he was 4th grade level. So
God.
So part of our intent is to educate families so they can advocate for their children. Okay, so these kids typically avoid behaviors. They have a history of struggling to read. Often they can memorize the easier words, the shorter one-syllable words, but when you get into those upper grades and multisyllabic words, that's where you see them starting to crash and burn. They also might have issues with the sight words because they don't follow regular patterns, and they'll confuse things like where and were, or there, here and there, right? Those words that are close. And of course, they have difficulty with comprehension because they don't have the other decoding issues, and they haven't been readers, and they don't have the vocabulary, like I said before. So I think we shared this in the last slide, in the last presentation. So let me link this PowerPoint. Actually, what I'm going to do is walk through this a little bit, and then I'm going to give you guys some time to kind of click on some of these links. So let me just escape this. Keeps progressing. So I can put this in the chat. Okay. So these are all linked. Somebody asked about the science of reading and what does Orton-Gillingham, what's the relationship between the science of reading? Well, I'll answer that. What they have found in the science of reading is that structured, systematic kinds of instruction that Orton-Gillingham proposed over 100 years ago is actually the kind of reading instruction that supports all learners, but particularly our kids that have any kind of language learning difficulty or dyslexia and need more specific instruction. So the science of reading really supports what Orton-Gillingham does. And now there's a lot of programs, even some tier 1 programs, like I said, the 95% group. Has anybody seen 95% used in schools? Some of the teachers that train with us, their district, West Covina, now uses 95% as their tier 1 instruction. And another program that schools are using is called UFly. That comes from the University of Florida Literacy Institute. And they kind of created this manual during COVID and made it available to teachers. And now they're selling it. It's like $90 to buy the manual, and then you can teach. And they have all kinds of free resources and support for teaching structured literacy following a very distinct scope and sequence. That's very usable and user-friendly. I know a lot of schools that are using that one. So these are some of my favorite books. When Amber was talking about SAID, like learning to decode words like SAID, those high frequency words that also have some kind of phonologic or phonemic irregularities, Seidenberg talks about that in his book, that when we read, our eyes actually read letters and words. And there, you know, how many of you are fluent readers? How many of you would you say are successful readers? You can give me a thumbs up or a chat. So Marini is. Kimberly, not someone else? Okay. Is that because you have some of your own struggles, Kimberly, or just not much of a reader?
No, I mean, well, I don't consider myself like a fluent, but I do, there's been some times that I do struggle with like sounding out like some words or whatever. It's hard for me to like, especially big words that I've never even seen, honestly, or have heard of. So it's like, I'm like, what is this? But other than that, like, that's, I'm like, well, I don't really consider myself like fluent like that. So
okay. So
yeah.
is that because you didn't learn those strategic decoding patterns and syllable types, so when you look at a big word, you can't identify how to decode it?
No, it just, to me, it's just like, because well, my first language is Spanish, so it's always been like kind of hard to juggle with both at the same time.
Sure,
So
sure.
that's the only reason. But and then like now that we have all these new sources of to how to like basically sound off the words or pronounce them and stuff, it's like there's much more stuff out here now than there was before.
Sure, sure. But what my point is with Seidenberg, when I was going to school and I got a reading master's, we were taught that we like look at words as if they're pictures. So I take a word like said, and I just see SAID as one picture and I know it's said. But that's not actually what happens. What happens is I see the S, I see the D, I know it's S and D that make the sounds they make. And they call it orthographic mapping, where I've mapped that word. And so I read said, but it happens so fast I don't even notice it because my brain, it's all one thing. But I'm actually reading it. I'm actually decoding it letter by letter. It's kind of like when you type. How many of you, when you type, is everybody pretty much an automatic typer? You can type without like looking at the keyboard, you know, like anybody type the THE, you just don't even have to think the letters really. It's just so automatic, your fingers just go to the right letters. But if you're typing a word like elephant, you kind of have to stop and think, right? E-L-E, because it's not automatic. That's what happens here with reading too. I see the word the, and I've mapped it and it's so automatic, I just read it automatically. But elephant, or like Kimberly was saying, some of those longer words, you have to slow down and decode them. So it's the same kind of thing. So here are some articles that would be valuable. This one up here, The Science of Reading, this came out from the Reading League, and it's excellent, just overview, explaining the science of reading. And basically the science of reading is a collection of over 50 years of research that says, really, we need to teach reading explicitly. Whole word instruction doesn't work. Guided reading and cueing systems are not effective. That just teaches kids how to guess at words, but it doesn't teach them to decode. And really, we need to teach decoding. Like I said, it's not automatic. It doesn't just happen naturally. We have to teach it. And as we saw with the ladder of reading, 5% of the kids are going to figure it out. 35% of the kids, no matter what instruction you give them, are going to be able to get it. That leaves 60% of the kids that need more specific, explicit instruction. That's 6 out of 10. And the other kids in the class, the 4 out of 10 that could get it automatically, are just going to be enriched if we teach it well. So these articles, this structured literacy and typical literacy practices talks about what Orton-Gillingham is and what's the difference between what happens in a typical class, or like kind of what they call a balanced literacy class, versus what happens in the structured class. And then this other one, Orton-Gillingham, who, what, and how, goes into more explanation about what Orton-Gillingham is. So these are all 3 excellent. They're not linked here, but if you want them, you can email me and I'm pretty sure I have copies of them all. So we have a little time left. I will stop sharing. What would be a good use of your time? Do you want to take a few minutes to click on some of those resources and just see if those websites are helpful? Do you want to ask questions? Do you want to go home and go to dinner? What would you like to do with the last 15 minutes or so that we have? You want me to walk you through some of the sites? I can do that.
Yeah, sorry, a quick question. You're mentioning right now about you said you might have the articles, you said, or okay. You said, could we email you to ask you if you could send us to the PDF? Okay.
Yeah.
But we could look through the links if anything. I don't know if anyone else.
Here's my email. I'll just show you some things. So let's start with the California Dyslexia Guidelines, because they're very good. And this could be something you could take back to your schools or your teachers and maybe do like a little study of it, you know, kind of like a book study thing. So this information, a lot of the information for these, I think, came from the IDA, International Dyslexia Association, certainly the definition. So here's just an overview of what's in here. They have the definition of dyslexia, which is the one that I shared with you that comes from the IDA, about it being neurobiological. There's the neuroscience and background, talking about it as a language learning disability, which is why it impacts reading, because reading is so dependent on your ability to identify sounds in language. Then I like this characteristics by age group. So it goes over, let's see if this is linked, what you might see at different ages and grades. So here's preschool age children. It's a little bigger. What you might see kindergarten through first grade, or through first grade, I'm sorry. Second and third grade. So it's very specific. And this all could be helpful because a lot of our kids are sliding through the cracks. Either the really bright kids, or, you know, we had COVID for 2 years where a lot of kids didn't get literacy instruction. So even if they're not dyslexic, they may manifest some of these because they just didn't really learn, because everything was online and God knows that was a mess, right? I mean, it was just I'm a teacher educator, and it was hard for me to teach my teachers fully online. I can't imagine trying to teach a kindergartner anything. It's just awful. And so these are some of the things that you might see. And I know this is important because right now I have a doctoral student who's finishing for her dissertation, and she herself is dyslexic, and she was not identified until she came to us as a doc student. So she has been struggling her whole life. No one identified her. She's been able to fake her way around a lot of things. And now she's finishing her dissertation, and she actually interviewed other dyslexic adults and some of the challenges they face in the work world. Because it's really difficult when you're asked to do things like respond on the spot or take notes and write answers. I mean, it's really difficult. There can be supports, but if you don't get the kind of support you need, that can be problematic. Social emotional factors. So what are some of the challenges kids with dyslexia that are unidentified end up feeling bad about themselves, acting out, can get almost suicidal sometimes because they feel stupid and they don't know why. All their friends can do it and they can't. It talks about screening and assessment, special education, etc. And this came out in 2017. So you're all aware that California passed a law that we now have to screen our children for reading challenges in K2 starting fall of 2025. Is everybody aware of that? So what's important about that, it's like we have eye screening, we have hearing screening. The screening is, the idea is that we can identify kids that, we flag them. We go, okay, you triggered a bell, let's take a deeper look, just like with eyes, right? Anybody have eye screening or hearing screening where they went, it looks like there's something, take your kid to the eye doctor, let's see if they need glasses. It's the same thing with this. Let's screen these kids, because if we can identify a kid that might be struggling and give them extra phonemic awareness, for example, or extra letter sound support, we can prevent reading challenges. And if we can catch a kid in kindergarten or first grade, they're 4 times more, well, let me do it this way. If we catch a kid in 4th grade where they're already behind, it is 4 times harder and takes 4 times longer to remediate them than to catch it, than to prevent reading difficulties. So we can basically, with really good instruction, almost eliminate reading problems for kids that might otherwise have problems if we can catch it early enough. So my big takeaway from this is prevention trumps intervention. We don't want to intervene. We don't want to wait till they're in 8th grade where they've had not just, like my 8th grader, he's had so many years of struggle. And look at all the books and words and vocabulary he hasn't gotten because he hasn't been a reader for the past 7 years of his school career. So when we're working together and I ask him, do you know what that means? He doesn't. There's a lot of vocab that he should know as an 8th grader, but because he hasn't been a reader, he doesn't. And of course he feels bad about himself, and on and on and on. So that's a great resource. Let me just show you quickly Flyleaf. So if you go to Flyleaf here, you can just log in for free. Here's their free ebook library. And you can buy all these as copies. I usually just go as an instructor. And the easiest one, not too many letters in this one. So if they've only learned 6 letters, they could read this book. I am Sam. Hang on. Uh-oh. Sorry. Got all carried away. Sam. I am Sam. Am I Sam? Yes, I am Sam. Why is probably not one you would have taught early on, but yes is probably a word they know. It's in their oral vocabulary, so you could introduce that pretty easily to this. So can you see it's very simple, not a lot, not very many words. And actually, the little girl I was tutoring, the end of 2nd grade, she couldn't read this. She didn't know how to match letters and sounds. She didn't know how to blend the sounds. And when she saw am, like am I Sam, she didn't see the pattern am being repeated over and over again. So it was really important to start at this level with her, just to start learning to blend letters and sounds. So they go from very simple to more complex. You can see you get farther down, more sophisticated words. Here we have words with consonant blends like FR and FL. But what I like about these are my favorite. I've used quite a few decodables. These are my all-time favorite because they are truly decodable, but they're not like stupid ones. I hate really stupid ones. But they are ones that kids that are struggling to read can decode. And my little guy that I tutor my 4th grader, I don't use these with my 8th grader. I use other stuff because these are too simple for an 8th grader. But for 4th grade and down, I think these are appropriate. So Flyleaf is my favorite go-to for decodables. I'm going to buy the set once they're no longer available online, but I also happen to be tutoring online right now, so I can use these when I'm tutoring. If you have questions about law, Rights Law is an excellent site for, you know, what schools are required to do by law. Decoding Dyslexia California is a new branch. We just started our branch in California here, and they have a really good updates on legislation. So for example, AB 2222 was just promoted and shut down. But if you have questions about dyslexia or what's going on in the state of California in terms of laws, this would be a really good site for you. Louisa Moats, who is the one that said teaching reading is rocket science. She's brilliant and awesome, and she's written a really good book called Speech to Print. But this has a lot of good resources for teachers about teaching structured literacy based on the science of reading. So she has a guide here, but she also has a website called Reading Rockets. So she'd be a good one to go to too. And then there's the IDA, International Dyslexia Association, either the LA branch. So the Los Angeles branch supports the counties of Los Angeles, Los Angeles, Ventura, Kern County, Santa Barbara, and one other. And then there's the IDA Tri-Counties branch, and they service San Bernardino, Orange County. What's their third one? I can't remember offhand. And I share this with you because they often, if you teach within their range, like the IDA LA offers scholarship for people that want to get trained, say in Orton Gillingham or structured literacy.
Sorry, what was the name of it? What was the name of it again? For the one for the, you said the Orange County, San Bernardino one?
It's it's the International Dyslexia Association Tri-Counties branch. So IDA Tri-Counties. But they do a lot of great free webinars, and they often offer scholarships. The IDA LA does a great conference every March. Next year, I think it's March 8th. And that's held on the UCLA campus. So you could go for a day and get great resources, meet with other people that work with dyslexic kids. About 250 people go or so. So you just missed the one for this year. It was really good. And my group presented, which was very fun too. So these are all excellent sites if you have questions and are looking for more information. My 2 favorite books to get started, that's Stanislaw Dewan, Reading in the Brain. And it's a really good match with Marianne Wolf's Proust and the Squid, because his is more, they're both user-friendly. They're both written for non-scientists, non-educators. But his is more kind of informational. Hers is more story. So they kind of support each other. And then the other ones are also very good too. Sally Shaywitz, Overcoming Dyslexia, is one great, geared for parents. So if you're looking for information or wanted to share with parents, hers is excellent. This is the 2nd edition, I think, or maybe the 3rd. Okay, so any other questions or comments? We're running out of time. Why don't you share in the chat one takeaway or something you think that we should include if we haven't included? And I will stop sharing.
I have a question. There's any like online like books or anything that we can use to help our tutors? Because I'm like I volunteer from Stepa Tutoring. So yeah, some of my students, they are need help with reading. So they don't have dyslexia, but they are struggling with reading. So I don't know if you know something about any programs that I can use on the online for free.
Well, those Flyleaf books that I shared, those are all free. You can scroll through them, pick one that you think is at about the level of the kid's need, and they're decodable. So if the kid needs decodable books, which means there's not a lot of words that have unusual or odd spellings, that'd be my first go-to. You can also, Letitia, go to YouTube and get the books that they read out loud. Just turn off the sound and you click through it yourself. So there's a lot of books that are, they show people reading them out loud. There's
Yeah, I have used some of the YouTube. Yeah, I think those are working too.
but the Flyleaf ones are the only ones I know that have like the whole books that are free and available online. But it's an excellent resource, and there's like, I don't know, 30 or 40 or 50 of them. So there's a lot
All
to
right.
choose.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anything else? Any takeaways? Thank you, Cheryl. She left. Oh, she's still here. Okay. And just if you have any other questions, let me know. I do train teachers in Orton Gillingham. So if you're interested in doing a training, feel free to reach out. Also, you can reach out if you work in the LA County or one of the other counties I mentioned that LA serves, you could reach out to them about trainings because they're offering trainings this summer in the Wilson program, which is a structured literacy program that's Orton Gillingham based. And I think it's a 1-week training. So that's a possibility too. Yeah, that screening, Cheryl. Well, the problem, Cheryl, or one of the challenges I think is once they screen these kids, they need to have trained teachers to know what to do with them. So that's the next step. That's what that bill AB 2022-22 was going to do, but it got shut down for, I think, some good reasons.
Yes.
But we need to get our teachers trained in structured literacy so they know what to do with it once they find that these kids have issues, right?
That's so important. And everyone here in our area is using SIPs now. Are you familiar with that? And what's your opinion?
I think SIPs, that's Marianne Wolf, the woman that wrote Proust and the Squid. No, I'm sorry. That's the New Mood Bell, isn't it? I can't remember. But yes, I think SIPs is good because that's a phonics decoding, right? It's sounds and letters and matching sounds and letters. So it's a good start, but it's not phonics. So how do we, we need to actually get them seeing the words on the page and being able to read. But it's a good start. 95% is an excellent program. UFly is excellent. So if you type, I think if you just do a search for let me just see. UFly Foundations or UFly Toolbox, it'll take you to their site, UFLI. Etymology, look up Gina Cook on YouTube. She has a great video talking about ONE, like one, and why ONE is spelled one, and all the relationships with alone, loan, that keeps that ONE. So even though we pronounce it one when it's all by itself, it's related to all these other words that have to do with singular. All right, friends. Well, I think that's it. Thank you all for joining me. Have a wonderful evening. And reach out if you have any other questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Letitia, share what? The UFly link? I mean,
Sorry, I actually do have a question in regards to when you were talking about the whole training for teachers. Is there a fee for it, or do you pay for it, or is it free?
yeah, no, it's an intensive 1 year. It's like 2 semesters, 2 college classes, basically.
Okay, and can I get more information from you once I email? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna